Hey, yo, hey everyone, Andrew here, bringing you another video review, and today we're going to be doing Supergirl, Friends and Fugitives, a Superman New Krypton collection. Take a look at this comic cover right here. Let me just say, this is a very nice, very beautiful comic cover for Supergirl, or for any comic in general. It's just very nice. Now, on to Friends and Fugitives. Friends and Fugitives is obviously part of the New Krypton story. And this has basically two stories in it. The first story isn't really much of a story. It doesn't have anything to do with the big plot that is in this comic. It's just a story of Kara flying around and doing chores for her mother. Going to the Labor Guild, or the Science Guild, or the Artisan Guild, or the Military Guild, and she's kind of going all around to all the different guilds, and doing these miscellaneous chores that seem so random that her mother wants her to do. Now, in this, you kind of get a feeling of what Kara's emotions towards her mother is. How she depicts her mom, especially after the death of her father. She sees her mom as someone that's vulnerable, but at the same time has these defenses up, that's cold, but also very emotional. And she also thinks that her mom sending her on all these miscellaneous chores as a punishment for not finding the killer of her father. It's later revealed that it's not a punishment, but rather just sending Kara on all these different miscellaneous chores to figure out what guild she feels as though she belongs to. The Science, the Labor, the Military, the Religious Guild. Kara has a choice on what guild she gets to go to, which kind of makes a question come up. In New Krypton, and in Krypton in general, the Labor Guild is seen more of a lower class guild. Okay, stay with me. They don't even have a representative on the Kryptonian Council. So if you're allowed to choose what guild you can be part of, why in heavens would you choose the Labor Guild? Just saying out loud. It seems a little illogical. I'm sure there's some kind of explanation, like you're born into the Labor Guild or something like that, but why would Kara choose the Labor Guild if it's like basically slavery? Anyways, putting that little plot hole aside, Kara makes her choice on what guild it's going to be. I'm not going to say which one it is, but it's something that is near and dear to her heart. Let's get into the main story. The story starts off with Supergirl, Flamebird, and Nightwing teleporting out of nowhere and beating the shit out of each other. Wait, what just happened? We went from Kara being on New Krypton to teleporting out of nowhere with Flamebird and Nightwing? What? Okay. This story is actually a continuation of a story in another New Krypton story arc. I hate it when comics do this. They start a story in one comic series and then they end it somewhere else. They started in Robin, they ended in Nightwing. They started in Supergirl, and they ended in Superman. It's just annoying as hell. I'm not exactly sure which story it was. I believe it's one of the Nightwing and Flamebird's comics. But originally, this story takes place before a story that involves the supposed killing of Mon-El. But Mon-El doesn't get killed. And Flamebird and Nightwing, along with Supergirl, are framed by the people who supposedly killed Mon-El. And because of this, they are now viewed as murderers on Earth. And this story picks up with them teleporting out of danger into Metropolis with everyone hating them because, well, they're viewed as murderers. Plain, flat, and simple. I must say, though, right before this random teleportation events that happen, you do get a little backstory of Kara's relationship with Flamebird as best friends. And it's actually a nice thing because it sets up the emotion and the conflict between the two of them. Because right now, Kara is pissed at her friend, Flamebird. Why? Because Flamebird did nothing when her father died. And she's just livid about it. Plus, Flamebird is kind of viewed as a rogue, a crazy girl, because she actually believes in the mystical creature that is Flamebird. And she feels as though she's the reincarnation of this mystical creature. Now, I'm getting too much into the Kara and Flamebird relationship. The basic plot is that they're viewed as fugitives. Supergirl, Flamebird, and Nightwing. And they have to run away from the science police and the military and all the people that want to go out and kill them. While at the same time trying to figure out who the real murderer is. Which I'm pretty sure you guys could figure out who's been a big villain for Supergirl for quite a bit of time. Reactor. So they have to find Reactor, beat the shit out of him, get a confession out of him, and prove that they are actually innocent. While at the same time dealing with New Krypton and also dealing with the Science Police. The question is this, will they put all their little emotions aside towards each other? Just put it aside, just put it over there. and be able to work together to get away and to prove their innocence, or will their conflicts with each other, well, cost them a friend or a family member or someone close to them? Well, you're just going to have to read and see. So with that said, let's get on to the good, the bad, and whether or not you should get it. Let's start things off with the good, as always. First good, the art is beautiful in this. I love the art. It's a great tone for Supergirl. It's a great tone for the comic. It works out very nicely. I do love the art. Two is that the story is actually good. Despite the fact that it's out of nowhere and it's a continuation of another story, the story is good. These guys are on the run. They need to prove their innocence. It's kind of a nice chase story without actually having to be too much of a chase story. It works out well on several different levels. And you have these people that are constantly in conflict with each other. You have Supergirl, who's in conflict with Flamebird. You have Nightwing, who is Christopher Kent, the adopted son of Clark Kent and Lois Lane. And you see that he's different, he's changed, he's older, and you see the conflict that's going on throughout him and exactly what he should do. Should he follow Flamebird? Is she telling the truth about her mystical powers? Or is she just lying out of her ass because she's a crazy little bitch? Well, it's conflicts like that that make this story a good story. It's a very nice story. Another good to this is that everyone feels in character. See, the thing about Kara Zor-El, Supergirl, is that she's gone through so much changes throughout her comic. Now, I was talking to someone at work who reads a lot of comics, but he refused to read Supergirl because of Supergirl's backstory. Now, I wanted to make a comment on Supergirl's backstory in my new Krypton review, but I didn't because of time. And basically what happens with Kara's history is that at the start of her comic in Supergirl Power, all the way up until the third or fourth volume, Supergirl is having constant conflict with her backstory. There's so many different versions of it that she remembers. She remembers a version when her parents sent her to Earth to kill her cousin. Then there's a version where her father makes her kill her mother in order to save her from the Phantom Zone creatures. And there's another version here, there's several different versions, and you don't know what is the true backstory of Supergirl. And eventually it's revealed in New Krypton that she actually has kryptonite poisoning and it's causing her to go loopy. She gets the kryptonite poisoning removed and she gets her true backstory. Now, the person at work that I talked to said that he hated this because it just felt as though they had no control over the character and that they just did some kind of cop-out whitewash ending for her with a new backstory in New Krypton. I have to wholeheartedly disagree because it gives levels to the character of Kara. It makes her rebel, it makes her find herself, it makes her find who Supergirl, Kara Zor-El of Earth is, without having to rely on who Kara Zor-El of Krypton is. In addition to that, just because her backstory kind of gets whitewashed doesn't take away from the fact that you get these great stories where she's in conflict with her backstory and in conflict on what she needs to do when it comes down to her cousin. So in saying that, the fact that Kara is in character in here is beautiful because Kara is such a unique character. She's not like any traditional superhero or Superman character where she proves justice in the American way. She's a confused teenager struggling just to make it through life. This has been a theme throughout Kara Zor-El's comics from the very beginning, and it's very nicely emphasized in Friends and Fugitives because while she is kind of at center with herself, she's not at center with her world. She's not at center with her family. Her mother and her are at conflict. Her and New Krypton are at conflict. Her and Kal-El are at conflict. And her and her friends are at conflict. Even with Lana, this conflict's growing. She may be at center with herself, but she's not at center with others. And it is a beautiful characterization of Kara Zor-El, who I have to say is one of the best characters out there right now because she's a unique, diverse character that you can do a lot with, especially for teenage characters who tend to be the hardest characters to write. Now, I went off a little tangent about that, but I wanted to kind of just throw in on the fact that New Krypton did a very good job at kind of rewriting and consolidating Supergirl's history. With that said, another good thing about this is that it deals with the other half of New Krypton, the humans. New Krypton Saga, the 4-volume story arc that I showed you in a previous review, which dealt with New Krypton and World of New Krypton, dealt with mostly the New Krypton's perspective of the war between Earth. But Supergirl's comics deal with more or less the perspective of the humans, how humans have this phobia of the Kryptonians, and how the science police is always going around searching for them, and all that jazz. It's a great thing because you only get one side of the story in the Superman comics. In Supergirl, you get the other side of the story. Which could also be bad because that means you have to go and buy both comics to get the full effect of the New Krypton series. But it's nice because you get that other side of the story, and it's really nicely done because you see these American soldiers, especially the captain of the Kryptonian police, the science police, not the Kryptonian police. I guess he does police Kryptonians, but basically you see him in conflict with his orders, his duties, what he should do, and the people he's working with, like Reactor or Metallic. So that's another good about this comic. Now, it sounds like I'm praising this comic, but it's not without its bad. First bad, and huge bad, is the fact that this is just a continuation of another Superman comic, which I believe is Nightwing and Flamebird. I could be wrong, it could be the Mon-El comic, but I believe it is Nightwing and Flamebird. So with that said, you kind of go into this comic, and you don't even know what's going on. You're like, whoa, what just happened? Where did they come from? And it's annoying as hell. Comic books do this sometimes, and it is just absolutely out there annoying, and I hate it. It's a huge problem. Eventually, you can kind of piece together what's going on, but I was like six pages into it, and I'm like, what's going on? And eventually I pieced it together. Oh, okay, so that happened, now we're just picking up there. Well, it is bearable, and while you can work around it, it's still annoying. It is really annoying. They shouldn't be doing this stuff with comic books. It's plain, flat out simple. They need comic books to have synergy. One story to start, and it to end in the same comic book. Doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen in big crossover events, like World of New Krypton. Another one would be like Batman Nightfall, or No Man's Land, or, stuff like that. If you're going to do big crossovers, that's fine, but just make sure you have one story start in one comic and end in that comic. So that is a huge bad in this. Another bad is that there is some stuff that's kind of dealt with Reactor in this that is at the very ending, and I have yet to see it get picked up in the Supergirl comics. Now again, I pick up the trade, so it might have got picked up in the issues at some point, but in the later Supergirl comics, they kind of just drop the whole Reactor image. And see, Reactor, I think, is one of the best villains that Supergirl has. He's a personal villain and also a huge threat for Supergirl. And they kind of just drop his story on New Krypton. I'm sure it's going to be picked up at some point in the trade, but they kind of just drop it. And when you have such good momentum with a villain like him, you should keep it going. And that's the biggest thing. It's not the fact that they don't pick it up. It's just that you have this momentum with this villain and it just kind of drops. So that's another bad. I didn't like how they just dropped the momentum with that villain. On to whether or not you should get it. Well. Supergirl's comic right now is probably the most intimidating comic for people to go out there and read. Because Supergirl is 1, a sidekick, 2, a teenager, and 3, her comic can be a little bit of a mess to read. However, I do say that some of the Supergirl comics are some of the best comics out there right now. And Friends and Fugitives is an example of a great story. It does have some problems in that the story itself is kind of a mess, because it's a continuation of another story. But everyone is in character here, and the writing is good. It is a nice story in that, and the art is nice too. So, while it fails in one area, it succeeds in another. Supergirl fans, I highly recommend getting this. And people that have been reading the Flamebird and Nightwing should probably pick this up too, because it's a continuation of the stuff that you've already been reading. This story, you also don't really need to read New Krypton at all to kind of get. You can understand what's going on, but unlike the previous Supergirl story arc, you really don't need to read any sort of the New Krypton volumes to understand what's going on. Very little that has to do with New Krypton in here. This is more to deal with the human police. However, if you do need to read New Krypton, go up to at least volume 3, because there is a few scenes in here that deals with Kal-El as being one of the Kryptonian military commanders. So if you don't know what's going on there, just read up to volume 3 of New Krypton. But on a whole, whether or not you should get it, I enjoyed this. I really did. And I think Supergirl is standing strong as a great comic. I think once we get out of this new Krypton shit that's going on right now with the trades, Supergirl's going to have so much potential. I think it's really just the fact that she's tied down by Superman stuff that it's hurting her comics. That's the only thing that really is hurting her comics. Because if you listen to the bad I just said, it's really just mostly all the tie-ins that are connected to it or having to deal with new Krypton. Once that stuff is over with, I think this comic is going to shine. So with that said, I'm going to end this review here. Supergirl, Friends and Fugitives. I recommend picking it up if you're a Supergirl fan or if you're reading New Krypton. Other than that, you might want to wait on it because it might confuse you. This is Andrew saying, peace out for now.